2026, we've sent rovers to Mars and decoded the human genome. Yet a civilization from 4,500 years ago is still defying every logic we have. Why did they bury giant ships in the middle of a bone-dry desert? How did they drill granite with the precision of a modern CNC machine? And is the curse of the pharaohs just a coincidence or an ancient biological weapon? Today, we're not looking at textbooks. We're diving into the discoveries that even our most advanced AI can't explain. Welcome to the 9 greatest mysteries of ancient Egypt. Let's start with the most iconic guardian on Earth, the Great Sphinx of Giza. For decades, history books told us a simple story. It was built by Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 BC, carved from a single limestone ridge to guard his pyramid. But in 2026, that story isn't just being questioned, it's being dismantled. Look closely at the body of the Sphinx. You'll notice deep, undulating vertical fissures. Geologists like Robert Schoch have pointed out a devastating flaw in the traditional timeline. Those erosion patterns aren't caused by desert wind or sand. They are the unmistakable signatures of thousands of years of heavy, cascading rainfall. The problem? Egypt hasn't seen that kind of climate since the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. This means, when the Nile was a lush savanna, the Sphinx was already there, watching the stars. And speaking of stars, let's talk about the Leo alignment. If you rewind the cosmic clock using astronomical software to 10,500 BC, a stunning coincidence occurs. On the spring equinox, the Sphinx, a lion-bodied monument, would have looked directly at its own celestial counterpart, the constellation of Leo, rising perfectly on the horizon. Is it just a fluke, or was this monument designed as a giant stone clock to mark a lost epoch of humanity? But the mystery goes deeper, literally. For years, rumors of a hall of records hidden beneath the Sphinx's paws have circulated. In recent years, seismic surveys have indeed detected anomalous cavities, rectangular chambers that don't look natural. Why haven't we opened them? Official narratives claim they are just water-filled voids, but the secrecy surrounding these spots has fueled a new theory in 2025. The Sphinx wasn't a tomb or a tribute. It was a library. A time capsule left by a pre-Diluvian civilization, one that knew a global cataclysm was coming and stashed their advanced knowledge deep underground where the sand would protect it for millennia. And then, there's the head. Have you ever noticed how the head is far too small for the body? It's disproportionate. Many independent researchers believe the Sphinx wasn't originally a pharaoh. It was a complete lion. At some point in the dynastic era, a pharaoh, perhaps Khafre, decided to claim the ancient monument by recarving the weathered lion's head into his own likeness. This would explain why the head looks so new and well-preserved compared to the heavily eroded ancient body. So, what is the Sphinx? Is it a 4,500-year-old statue of a king, or is it a 12,000-year-old sentinel of a forgotten era? If the latter is true, everything we know about the cradle of civilization is wrong. We aren't the first advanced version of ourselves. We are just the latest. If the pyramids are a miracle of scale, then the granite artifacts of ancient Egypt are a miracle of engineering. To understand the mystery, we have to talk about granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, rated 7 out of 10 on the Mohs scale. Today, we cut it with diamond-tipped saws and high-pressure water jets. But 4,500 years ago, the Egyptians supposedly did it with copper saws and sand. Let's look at the evidence that makes modern engineers lose their sleep. In places like Abu Rawash and Karnak, we find core drill holes in solid granite. If you look inside these holes, you'll see something impossible. Perfect, spiral grooves with a constant pitch. This isn't the mark of a primitive hand drill. Sir Flinders Petrie, the father of modern Egyptology, was so shocked by these marks that he calculated the pressure needed to create them. His conclusion? The drill was sinking into the granite with a force of over 2 tons, moving at a feed rate that exceeds our modern steel drills. How is that possible? If you've ever tried to drill a hole in a stone wall at home, you know it takes effort. Now imagine drilling through granite as if it were soft cheese. In 2025, experimental archaeologists tried to replicate this using copper and sand. It took them weeks to drill just a few centimeters, and they couldn't produce those perfect spiral grooves. The mystery deepens when we look at the Serapeum of Saqqara. Inside these dark tunnels lie 24 massive granite boxes, each weighing up to 100 tons. The lids fit so perfectly that they are airtight. But here's the kicker. The interior surfaces are flat to within a few 10,000ths of an inch. They are so precise that they meet the standards of a modern surface plate used in aerospace manufacturing. How did they achieve this level of optical flatness inside a dark, cramped tunnel using only hand tools and oil lamps? Some researchers today suggest a radical theory. The Egyptians weren't just using muscle, they were using vibration. Known as ultrasonic drilling, this technology uses high-frequency sound waves to vibrate a tool bit, allowing it to melt through stone like a hot knife through butter. It sounds like science fiction, but it's the only explanation that fits the physical marks left behind. And then, there are the unfinished obelisks. In the quarries of Aswan, we see massive scoop marks in the granite, as if someone used a giant ice cream scooper to remove tons of rock. Traditional history says they used diorite pounding stones. But have you ever tried to pound away a mountain with a rock? It would take generations. The marks look more like the rock was softened, perhaps by a chemical process or intense thermal energy, before being scooped out. We are forced to ask, are we looking at a lost high technology that was wiped out by a global catastrophe? Was there a time when humans mastered the laws of physics in ways we are only now beginning to rediscover? The granite speaks, but it tells a story that doesn't fit our timeline. In November 1922, Howard Carter broke a tiny seal on a stone door in the Valley of the Kings, revealing the golden treasures of Tutankhamun. But as the world celebrated, a dark shadow began to fall. Within months, Lord Carnarvon, the man who funded the dig, died from an infected mosquito bite that turned into pneumonia. Then Carter's pet canary was eaten by a cobra. A radiologist who x-rayed the mummy died of a mysterious illness. By 1935, at least 20 people associated with the tomb had met untimely, often bizarre deaths. The headlines screamed, "The Curse of the Pharaohs." But as we stand in 2026, we have to ask, was it a supernatural spell or was it something much more calculated? Something biological? For thousands of years, these tombs remained hermetically sealed. Inside, the air became a stagnant soup of organic decay. When modern scientists finally analyzed the dust within these chambers, they found something terrifying. They discovered high concentrations of Aspergillus flavus, a deadly fungus known to cause severe allergic reactions and fatal bleeding in the lungs. Imagine a 3,000-year-old spore lying dormant in the dark, waiting for the first breath of a human intruder to wake up. But it wasn't just fungi. Analysis of the tomb walls has revealed layers of toxic mold and even high levels of ammonia and formaldehyde. Some researchers believe the ancient Egyptians intentionally lined the burial chambers with these substances, creating a poisonous atmosphere to protect the king's journey to the afterlife. It was a chemical trap that could last for millennia. And then there is the radiation. In several Old Kingdom tombs, particularly around Saqqara, Geiger counters have picked up unusually high levels of radon gas. Radon is a radioactive gas that leaks from the bedrock, and in a sealed underground room, it accumulates to lethal levels. Was it a geological accident, or did the ancients understand the power of hot rocks? They often spoke of invisible fires that guarded the tombs, a description that fits radiation sickness perfectly. Perhaps the most chilling part is the psychological warfare. The inscriptions on the doors didn't just warn of death, they promised that great birds would strike the necks of the intruders. To a superstitious explorer in a dark, oxygen-deprived tunnel, the power of suggestion combined with toxic spores and radiation creates a perfect storm for a curse. The pharaohs didn't need magic to protect their gold. They used the laws of biology and chemistry. They turned their final resting places into slow-acting time bombs. So, the next time you see a forbidden door in Egypt, remember, the curse isn't a myth. It's a 3,000-year-old weapon that is still very much alive. In 1925, when Howard Carter gently unwrapped the mummy of the boy King Tutankhamun, he found two daggers tucked into the golden bandages. One had a blade of gold, but the other was made of iron. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but there was a massive historical problem. King Tut died in 1323 BC during the Bronze Age. Humans supposedly hadn't mastered the high-heat smelting technology needed to create iron for another several hundred years. Even more baffling, after 3,300 years in a humid tomb, this iron blade hadn't rusted. It was as shiny and sharp as the day it was forged. For decades, it was an archaeological anomaly. But in 2016, and with further confirmation in 2025, science finally gave us an answer that belongs in a sci-fi movie. This dagger wasn't made from Earth's iron. It came from the stars. Using a technique called X-ray fluorescence spectrometry, researchers discovered the blade contains a high percentage of nickel and cobalt. This specific chemical signature is only found in one place: iron meteorites. The ancient Egyptians weren't just lucky, they were cosmic prospectors. They actually went out into the Great Sand Sea, found a meteorite that had fallen from the sky, and decided to turn a piece of the heavens into a weapon for their king. But here is the real mystery that engineers in 2026 are still debating. How did they forge it? Iron meteorites are incredibly difficult to work with. They require a forging temperature of over 1,500 degrees Celsius. In the Bronze Age, Egyptian kilns barely reached 1,000 degrees. If you try to hammer cold meteoric iron, it shatters like glass. To create a blade this thin, this smooth, and this durable, they would have needed a sophisticated controlled heat environment that, according to our history books, simply didn't exist yet. The Egyptians had a name for this material. They called it Bai and Pet, which literally translates to iron from the sky. They didn't see it as just a metal. They saw it as the literal bones of the gods falling to earth. By giving Tutankhamun a cosmic dagger, they weren't just arming him for the afterlife. They were linking his soul to the stars. When we look at this blade today, we aren't just looking at a beautiful artifact. We are looking at a 3,300-year-old piece of high technology. It's a bridge between ancient craftsmanship and the deep vacuum of space. It forces us to ask, what else did they know about the gifts from the sky? And how many more impossible materials are still hidden beneath the sands, waiting for us to find them? She was the most powerful woman of her time. Her name, Nefertiti, literally means a beautiful woman has come. Alongside her husband, the heretic Pharaoh Akhenaten, she overthrew thousands of years of Egyptian tradition to worship a single sun god. But then, at the height of her power, she simply vanished. For over a century, the location of Nefertiti's tomb has been the holy grail of Egyptology. We have the tomb of her husband and the world-famous treasures of her stepson, Tutankhamun. But the woman who likely ruled Egypt as a pharaoh herself remains a ghost. However, as we move through 2026, the ground beneath the Valley of the Kings is starting to speak. In recent years, high-resolution thermal imaging and ground-penetrating radar have detected something extraordinary. Behind the north wall of Tutankhamun's burial chamber, there are anomalies, hollow spaces that shouldn't be there. Some experts, like Dr. Nicholas Reeves, believe that Tutankhamun's tomb was originally a corridor leading to a much larger, much grander suite of rooms. The final resting place of Nefertiti herself. Why would she be hidden behind a wall? Think about the politics of the time. When Akhenaten died, the old priesthood returned to power with a vengeance. They wanted to erase every memory of the sun worshippers. If Nefertiti was buried in secret, it might have been a desperate act by those loyal to her to protect her body from being desecrated by her enemies. But there's a darker theory circulating in 2025. Some DNA evidence from the younger lady, a mummy found in a cache nearby, was long thought to be Tutankhamun's mother. New forensic reconstructions and genomic mapping are challenging this. Could Nefertiti's body have been moved, stripped of its royal insignia, and hidden among common mummies to keep her identity a secret forever? If we find her, it won't just be about gold or jewelry. Nefertiti represents a lost era of radical change. Finding her tomb would be like finding a missing chapter of a book that was ripped out 30,300 years ago. Until then, she remains the Lady of the Two Lands, watching us from the shadows of the desert, waiting for the light to finally find her again. For centuries, archaeologists searched for a lost royal city built by the magnificent Amenhotep III, the grandfather of Tutankhamun. They looked everywhere, but the desert kept it secret until 2020. While searching for a mortuary temple, a team led by Dr. Zahi Hawass stumbled upon something they never expected: mud brick walls rising from the sand, stretching in every direction. They hadn't just found a temple, they had found the rise of Aten, the largest ancient city ever discovered in Egypt. Walking through these streets today feels like stepping back 3,400 years. This wasn't a city of the dead, it was a city of the living. The walls, some nearly 3 meters high, are still intact. Inside the houses, archaeologists found the tools of daily life left exactly where they were dropped. Spinning wheels, weaving looms, and pottery jars still filled with dried meat and wine. It's a time capsule that froze a moment in history. But why is it called the Golden City? It's not because the walls are made of gold, but because it represents the golden age of Egypt, a time of unparalleled wealth, art, and power. The city was a massive industrial hub. We found bakeries with huge ovens, glass-making factories, and workshops that produced the exquisite jewelry found in the royal tombs. This is where the magic of ancient Egypt was actually manufactured. Yet, as we analyze the site in 2025, a haunting mystery has emerged. The city was thriving, the capital of an empire, and then it was suddenly abandoned. When Akhenaten, the heretic king, took the throne, he moved the entire population to a new city in the desert, Amarna. Why? Why leave behind such a masterpiece of urban planning? The excavations have also revealed strange burials. In one house, a skeleton was found with its arms stretched out to its side and a rope wrapped around its knees. No coffin, no traditional ritual. It's a chilling sight that suggests not everyone left the city willingly. Was there a plague, a political purge, or a religious terror that forced families to flee their homes in the middle of a meal? The lost Golden City is changing everything we know about Egyptian life. It proves that behind the grand pyramids and golden masks, there was a sophisticated, bustling society of craftsmen and families. As the sands continue to be swept away, we are realizing that the greatest treasures of Egypt aren't always found in tombs. Sometimes they are found in the streets where people once lived, loved, and disappeared. Imagine a block of stone as heavy as 2 Boeing 747s. Now, imagine moving that block 400 miles across scorching deserts and soft Nile mud, using nothing but ropes and human muscle. This isn't a hypothetical riddle, it's the reality of the Colossi of Memnon. 2 massive statues, each weighing 720 tons, standing tall on the west bank of Luxor. But how did they get there? For years, the standard explanation was manpower and wet sand. We've seen the famous wall painting from the tomb of Jehuti-Hotep, showing 172 men pulling a giant statue on a wooden sledge. In front of the sledge, a man pours water on the sand. In 2014, physicists confirmed that dampening the sand reduces friction by half, making it easier to slide heavy loads. But here's the problem. That statue in the painting weighed maybe 60 tons. The Colossi of Memnon weigh over 700. Even with wet sand, you would need an army of thousands, pulling in perfect synchronization on a road that would have to be as hard as concrete to prevent the sledge from sinking into the earth. But it gets even weirder. Some of the largest stones in Egypt, like the base of the Ramesseum statue, weigh over 1,000 tons. Modern, heavy-lift cranes struggle with these weights. In 2025, engineers using computer simulations discovered that the traditional sledge and rope method would likely snap the thickest hemp ropes available at the time. This has led to some out-of-the-box theories that science is finally starting to investigate. One is the use of acoustic levitation, or sound resonance. Ancient texts often speak of magical chants that could make stones feel light as feathers. While it sounds like a fairy tale, we know today that sound frequencies can indeed move matter. Could the Egyptians have discovered a way to use massive copper trumpets, or chanting, to create a vibration that reduced the effective weight of the stone. Another theory involves the River Nile in a way we never imagined. Some researchers suggest the Egyptians built specialized superbarges and used the annual flooding to float these giants directly to their pedestals. But even then, the logistics of loading and unloading a 1,000-ton block onto a wooden boat without it flipping over is an engineering nightmare. The Colossi stand as silent witnesses to a technology we have forgotten. They didn't just move rocks, they mastered gravity. They understood the relationship between mass, friction, and perhaps even the vibration of the earth itself. Every time we look at these giants, they remind us that the primitive tools of the past might have been far more sophisticated than the machines we use today. Throughout this journey, we've seen stones that defy gravity, drills that outpace modern steel, and tombs protected by biological traps. But what if there was a single source for all this impossible knowledge? In Egyptian mythology, there is a legendary artifact that haunts the dreams of every seeker of truth, the Book of Thoth. Thoth was the god of wisdom, writing, and magic. Legend says he authored a book containing 2 spells. The first allowed the reader to understand the language of the animals, to call the birds from the sky and the fish from the deep. The second was even more terrifying. It allowed the reader to behold the gods themselves and perceive the secrets of the stars and the hidden movements of the cosmos. In short, it was a user manual for the universe. For thousands of years, stories have circulated about this book being buried in a golden box, within a silver box, within a series of iron and bronze chests, guarded by immortal scorpions and snakes at the bottom of the Nile. It wasn't just a book of fairy tales. The Egyptians spoke of it as a physical object with dangerous power. Anyone who tried to read it was met with tragedy, as if the knowledge itself was too heavy for the human mind to carry. But as we look at the evidence in 2026, a new theory is emerging among alternative researchers. What if the Book of Thoth wasn't a literal book of paper and ink? What if it was a metaphor for a high-density information storage device? Or perhaps a complex mathematical code encoded into the very geometry of the pyramids and the Sphinx? Think about it. We've found papyri, like the Turin Papyrus and the Westcar Papyrus, that contain fragments of strange, high-level knowledge. They describe magic that sounds suspiciously like advanced science, changing the weather, healing incurable diseases, and manipulating physical matter. Could the Book of Thoth be the lost archive of that pre-Diluvian civilization we discussed earlier? A survival kit passed down to the first pharaohs to help them rebuild the world after a global cataclysm? Whether it is a physical object hidden in a secret chamber yet to be found, or a set of universal laws hidden in plain sight within the architecture of Giza, the Book of Thoth represents the ultimate mystery. It tells us that the ancient Egyptians didn't just believe in magic, they understood a version of reality that we are only now beginning to touch through quantum physics and frequency science. Perhaps the book is still out there, waiting for a generation that is wise enough to use its power without being destroyed by it. Until then, the secrets of Thoth remain etched in the silence of the desert sands. Ancient Egypt isn't just a chapter in our history books. It's a mirror reflecting how much we've forgotten. These monuments don't just stand in the sand. They stand as a challenge to our modern understanding of physics, biology, and the stars. Perhaps we aren't the first advanced version of humanity. We are simply the latest, rediscovering a truth that was carved in stone 5 millennia ago. The question isn't how they did it. The question is, what else are we missing? Keep looking at the stars and keep questioning the sand.